The new numbers just came out for the San Diego real estate market. So we're gonna hop in and let you know what's currently happening right now in San Diego, let you know what the current story is, what we're seeing out there, boots on the ground. And then we're gonna give you some indicators to keep an eye on for 2024. As we go in through the new year, there's a few things, a few different scenarios that could play out. We're gonna give you those. So if you're thinking about moving out here, you're gonna have a better idea on kind of what to keep an eye on and what to expect going into 2024. So let's get into it right now.
As always, we love making these videos for you, but just a reminder, we are real estate agents here in San Diego, so we would love to help you with your real estate needs. If you're thinking about moving out here in 2024 or beyond, definitely hit us up, call, text, email. We've got your back when moving to San Diego.
One of the biggest stories that we've seen play out this year is the inventory or the number of homes for sale. So if you're looking on Zillow and the Redfins and Compasses and all the apps, you've probably seen a lot less homes pop up because there's been a lot less homes for sale. I mean, we're talking like historically low, like even compared to last year, which was pretty darn low. This year, we're down like 47%. So the number of homes in November, at least in this month, I mean, it's been this story throughout the entire year, but just November to November of last year, it's down almost 50%. So historically, those numbers are much higher. When those numbers are higher, we're a little bit more in a balanced market or a little bit more in potentially even a buyer's market if we have a lot more homes than the number of buyers out there. So even with elevated interest rates that we have seen in the 6 to 8% range this year, we still have seen homes being sold fairly quickly for fairly close to that list price. We're not in the time of previous years, like previous 2021, 2022, when you've been seeing homes with multiple offers just going crazy over ask. It's a little bit different now. But one of the biggest drivers of that, where we are not seeing like a huge price drop, is because the inventory or the number of homes out there is much, much less than it has been in the past.
Just to dig into that price component that Chris mentioned just a little bit more, even earlier this year where we were seeing just a little bit more competition, where there were 2 or 3 offers, it was going for $40,000 to $50,000 over list, and that's kind of in that $1.4 million price point in San Marcos. We had clients that were able to beat out a couple offers, but it was only 3 or 4 offers, where this time last year, or even a little bit earlier in the year 2022, we were competing with 10 offers, 12 offers, trying to throw ridiculous numbers to try to get properties because there was so much competition and still a really low inventory, but not where we're at now. And as we get to kind of to the tail end of 2023, we just helped a client, actually we've helped a couple clients in the last few months get in kind of right near list price, just a little bit over, just a little bit under even in a couple scenarios. So it's just tighter now. You're not seeing 110% of list price to sale price. You're seeing kind of closer to that 96 to 100%. So that just tells you kind of the prices are kind of getting a little bit more level, plateauing a little bit. They're not going down. We're not seeing prices decrease in most areas, and we're not seeing them increase at that crazy level that we were seeing over the last couple of years. It's just kind of moderated a little bit more over the last few months.
And the third part of the story is interest rates, which have had a huge effect on the current market. One is basically, have you guys heard of the lock-in effect? Sellers staying where they are because over the past few years, maybe they've refinanced their home in the 3%, maybe even 2% range, like 2.75, 2.5, whatever it might be, super low interest rates. Now that becomes an asset. And also over the past few years, we're going to get into sellers a little bit later. So I'll cover that in a minute. But the buyers also, as prices have over the past few years, when interest rates were a little bit lower, prices were a little more flexible because buyers were able to stretch a little bit more at a 3 or 4% interest rate as opposed to a 7 to 8% interest rate. So the higher the interest rates have gone, the buyer pool has shrunk a little bit, but also the seller pool. So those number of homes, back to the inventory, the number of homes coming on the market has diminished as well. So that's why we haven't seen that big price drop that you would potentially expect at an 8% interest rate when buyers basically, a lot of them do sit on the sideline to wait to see what happens. Because the sellers, the homes people who were gonna sell, who were thinking about selling, who didn't necessarily need to sell, those people are still on the sidelines as well. So both of them are just kind of in a holding pattern. But I think people right now are reacting more to the change in interest rates as opposed to the exact number. Last year, the market got froze out about 7% interest rates. This year, we saw it go up to 8%, which it did slow down the market quite a bit. We'll see as it's sliding back down into that 7%, even closer to 7 right now as we're making this video. We'll see what the new year brings, but let's get into a few things, kind of scenarios of what we could expect to happen going into 2024.
All right, so let's get into 2024, kind of what we're seeing, what we're expecting in 2024 when it comes to inventory, prices, and interest rates. And the first one, inventory, this time last year, we were saying they couldn't get lower. They got lower. So didn't hit that one on the head, but we're at a point now where not very many people predicted that it could get this low. So what we're kind of expecting is there's a lot of pent up seller demand. So the sellers that have been thinking about moving for whatever reason, they're outgrowing their house, they're trying to get out of state, whatever the reason is, they've been holding on because those interest rates are at a historic high and they don't want to sell when they're at 2.5% or 3% and have to buy something at 7, 7.5%, 8%. We're expecting kind of in 2024 for some of those folks to jump off the fence because of they need to. And that's a big part of what we've seen this year is a lot of that inventory is folks that have to move or folks that this is, it's the time. So we're expecting in 2024 to see more of that where people just do it. So a lot of our clients that we're talking to, a lot of our group that we're chatting with is seeing the same thing. So when we're talking to clients that are thinking about selling, that have been thinking about selling for a year or two now, is they're getting to a point where they just have to make the move. So we're seeing it within our group and our people. And so we're just definitely expecting that to be kind of a common trend and people are just going to make the move.
Now hopping into prices as we continue into 2024, I think we're going to see a moderation of prices like we have seen in the latter part of this year, where in 2021 and 2022, especially during that spring selling market, it was basically a vertical line up because the buyer demand was so high, the inventory of the number of homes was so low. So a lot of buyers, I guess that would be this way, a lot of buyers, not a lot of sellers, equal prices rising pretty darn quickly. Going into 2024, as we continue the trend at the end of this year, we still have a little bit, we'll cover interest rates here in a little bit, as far as elevated rates, the movement of rates, where they're going, and different scenarios through there. And so that moderation of prices, like we said, I think will likely continue going into the new year if rates stay relatively the same. So a relatively flat market if rates stay relatively the same. But there's two other scenarios that we're going to get into regarding interest rates. So let's get into those.
So if interest rates go back up or start heading up in that direction, we'll definitely see inventory kind of build. There'll be less buyer demand. We've already kind of seen it this year. So we definitely see that scenario. If interest rates go up, that the prices will probably moderate a bit.
Now, what happens if interest rates drop? So that's the big question. If interest rates drop a little bit, what if they drop a lot? A lot meaning, I'm going to say so right now we're sitting just over 7% for interest rates. When we hit 8%, the number of buyers out there went down quite a bit. But it's also kind of seasonal. So November, December, October, kind of those end months, not in that order, but October, November, December, as we're going into those months, we typically see buyer demand, the number of buyers searching for homes, go down a little bit anyways. So do the buyers that we're looking come back into the market even at elevated interest rates? But anything, I think over 7 is kind of that moderation in prices. Once you start getting a 6 handle on it, 6 to 7% interest rates, I think that's when, especially going into the spring buying season, which is one of our normal buying seasons when it does ramp up here in San Diego, anything in there, we do see, I think, buyers back in the market. Maybe not as aggressively as previous years, but I think it will bring some buyers that were on the fence back into play. Now, if we see 5 or less, a 5 handle on that, 599 and down, I think that's going to spur a lot of buyer demand and potentially drive prices up significantly going into 2024. So there's a few different scenarios that could play out. We don't predict interest rates. They've been wild over the past few years, but that'll give you an idea of what to expect in the new year.
And just to add what Chris was talking about with interest rates going down, or the possibility of them going down, there is a level where a lot of those sellers that we're talking about with that pent-up demand, they jump off the fence. So will there be more inventory when interest rates get into that kind of that 5 spot? where there's kind of that dynamic of here's a lot more inventory, but how many of those people are buyers also? And does that create kind of a little bit more of that demand, a little bit more of that price increase? And we'll see soon.